A 73-year-old woman was humiliated and kicked out of first class. Little did they know she was about to take the airline down. How did she claim victory in the face of injustice? You've seen stories where people fight for what's right. This one will make you believe in the power of resilience and revenge. It all started on a regular day at the airport, but for 73-year-old Clara Richards, this flight was about to change everything. Clara wasn't your typical elderly woman. She was sharp, independent, and had spent decades building a life of success that many could only dream of. But none of that mattered when she walked up to the gate for her first-class flight. All right, now hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories. Let's continue. Clara had always loved the luxury of first class. The comfort, the service, the respect. It wasn't just about the seat. It was about the years of hard work, the battles she'd fought, and the people she'd helped along the way. But what happened next would make her question everything she thought she knew about respect and decency. She had booked her flight weeks in advance. She had her ticket, her ID, and a confident smile, ready to board the plane. But when she approached the gate, a young attendant looked at her with a cold, almost dismissive stare. He barely acknowledged her presence, his eyes scanning the boarding passes of others. "Excuse me, ma'am," the attendant said, barely making eye contact. "This is first-class boarding. You'll have to go to the back. This is for priority passengers only." Clara froze. She wasn't a stranger to prejudice, but this was different. She was being told to go to the back. The very same back she had fought against her entire life. The back she had refused to be pushed to, no matter her age, race, or gender. Clara wasn't going to let it slide. She straightened her back, stood tall, and confronted the attendant. "I have a first-class ticket," she said, her voice calm but firm. The attendant didn't look up. "Sorry, ma'am. The back of the plane is where you belong. Please step aside for the priority passengers." Clara's blood began to boil, but she didn't lose her cool. She knew what she was dealing with, a person too blind to see beyond their own biases, too young to understand the struggles that had led her to this moment. And yet, Clara wasn't just any elderly woman. She wasn't going to back down, but as she tried to reason with the attendant, the unthinkable happened. The man's response was nothing short of cruel. He raised his voice, now addressing her in front of others. "Are you deaf, ma'am? First class is for people who actually deserve it. Move aside. You're holding up the line." It was humiliating. Clara had spent years working her way up from nothing, and now she was being treated like she didn't matter. Like her life's worth didn't measure up to a job title or the color of her skin. This wasn't just a mistake. It was an act of disrespect that hit her deep in the heart. But Clara wasn't one to back down. She didn't fight for so long just to be pushed aside. So, she did something no one saw coming. The next day, she walked into the airline's headquarters, her face calm but determined. She wasn't there to make a scene. She was there to make a change. Clara didn't just have a ticket to first class. She had something far more powerful, the ability to turn the tables. The next day, Clara walked into the airline's headquarters, her steps calm, but with purpose. She wasn't the kind of person to make a scene, but she had a plan, one that would shake the entire industry. This wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had ever been disrespected, discriminated against, or made to feel small because of their age, appearance, or background. Inside the sleek, glass-walled office building, Clara walked right up to the receptionist. "I need to speak with the CEO," she said, her voice steady. The receptionist looked up, clearly surprised. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, skeptical. Clara nodded. "Yes, I do. I've come to make a very important business proposition. I'll wait." The receptionist hesitated, but ultimately let Clara sit down in the lobby. Clara wasn't just waiting for an appointment. She was waiting for the moment when everything changed. Minutes felt like hours, as Clara sat quietly, observing the busy office around her. Employees hustled by, glued to their phones and computers. But no one noticed her. The woman who had just been humiliated by one of their own. And now, the woman who would change the game forever. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the receptionist returned with a hesitant look. "Ms. Richards, the CEO will see you now." Clara followed her into the CEO's office, where a tall, sharply dressed man stood behind a sleek wooden desk. He looked the part of a successful businessman, but Clara knew this wasn't about business. This was personal. The CEO barely looked up as she entered, still scribbling notes on a piece of paper. "Ms. Richards, what can I do for you today?" he asked, his tone dismissive but polite. Clara stood tall, her eyes unwavering. "I'll make this simple," she said. "You run an airline, but you don't run it with the kind of respect I expect. Your company has made it clear that people like me aren't welcome in first class, despite what the tickets say. But I'm here to change that. I want to buy your airline." The CEO paused, looking at her now with confusion and disbelief. "What? Excuse me, but do you have any idea what you're asking? Buying a major airline isn't just a casual conversation, it's—" Clara interrupted him. "I don't care about your excuses. I don't care about the red tape or the bureaucracy. What I care about is righting the wrongs you've allowed to happen under your watch, and I've got the resources to make it happen. If you don't believe me, check the papers. I've already started the process." The CEO stared at her, speechless for a moment. Clara wasn't joking. She wasn't here to beg for justice. She was here to take what she had earned, her respect, her dignity, and her voice. Within the next few days, news spread like wildfire. Clara Richards, the woman who had been denied entry to first class, had now made the bold move of buying the airline. The story was everywhere, from news outlets to social media feeds. The same airline that had turned her away was now under the ownership of the very woman they had tried to silence. As Clara took over the airline, her first move was to fire the attendant who had humiliated her. That wasn't just for her. That was for anyone who had ever been made to feel less than they were because of someone's prejudice or arrogance. The public backlash against the airline was swift and brutal. People applauded Clara for her bold stand, and it didn't take long for the airline to announce a complete overhaul of their customer service policies. Clara's transformation wasn't just about business. It was personal. She didn't need the money. She didn't need the recognition. But what she did need was to show that no one, no matter their age, race, or gender, should ever be treated with anything less than dignity and respect. When Clara finally stood before the media as the new CEO of the airline, she made one thing clear to the world. Respect isn't earned by your title or your position. It's earned by your actions. And from that moment on, everyone in the airline, from the top executives to the cabin crew, knew exactly what Clara expected from them. Her message was clear. If you don't stand for respect, I will make you stand down. Clara wasn't just a woman who had bought an airline. She was a woman who had changed the game for everyone who had ever been overlooked, underestimated, or mistreated. She didn't just take her seat in first class. She built a new world where everyone had a seat at the table. So, what's the takeaway here? It's simple. Don't let anyone tell you where you belong. Stand your ground. Fight for your right to be treated fairly. And when the world tries to shut you down, show them that your power isn't in what they take from you, but in what you choose to build.